Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Crosby Hops Live. Thanks for tuning in. I am beyond stoked today. I have Patrick Ware, founder of Arizona Wilderness, on today. Welcome, Pat. I'd love to hear more about you. If you don't mind giving a quick introduction of yourself, how on earth you ended up starting Arizona Wilderness. We'll start with that and kick off this conversation.
So I'm Patrick Ware. I'm one of the founders of Arizona Wilderness. My background, actually, I'm right here in Tempe right now. I'm at a spot having some coffee. This is where I essentially learned, my passion for my craft. Started in college, and we were doing it on the stove like most people were doing. When you find that bug. And so I actually did an internship here through ASU with one of my old professors, the late, great David Kahns. And through that experience, we created a beer unit at ASU. So it was this science, history, and technology of beer. It went for a couple of years, and people would homebrew during the midterm and drink the beer in the final. And it was one of those moments where it was kind of a emerging craft beer scene. There wasn't a whole lot here. There wasn't a lot of opportunities in beer, and so I managed to finagle my way in to start cleaning kegs in the back of a local brewery. Doing it the traditional way. Through that experience, we saw explosive growth around here. We saw a lot happening. The energy was palpable, and my business partner Jonathan was actually starting the wilderness concept in his garage. So he started a Kickstarter campaign, and we, by fate, were kind of led together because we happened to look exactly like each other. So through that doppelganger effect, we essentially became business partners and brothers along the way. So that was about 10 years ago. And since then, the business has evolved. It's grown dramatically more than we had imagined when we first started. We were rated #1 new brewery in the world. And through that experience, we got access to a lot of the international scene and generally just the beer nerds and the beer scene that was, had this fervent, energy and enthusiasm for beer. So as we went along that process, we had maintained this value of committing to our local providers. And with that was always at the core of who we were as a brewery. We were able to expand that idea from a small amount of ingredients to something that was integral to the community here in Arizona, which was an emerging community, but the idea of local, the idea of understanding the land here and what can grow here. I think a lot of people that lived here probably didn't even know that, including myself. I grew up in the suburbs and didn't really understand the connection with agriculture here in Arizona. So it's been quite a journey through the years. Now we're 150 employees, multiple locations. We're at the core of downtown Phoenix with our second location, and it's a massive beer garden, and it's essentially a kind of welcome all place. And that's been fun to get inside the emerging culture of what Arizona is. And we believe that it kind of stems from that area has the art scene. It's got a lot of culture that in a place generally where there isn't a ton of culture. There's a lot of transient people that live in Arizona from the Midwest and Canada. And so we're trying to be a part of that identity, truly salt of the earth, touching the grains. Yesterday, we were actually up at the Yavapai Apache Nation learning about Sonora wheat that they're growing, which we've been using in our beer for many years, but haven't been able to secure malting until over the past year. We've been able to get malted Sonora white wheat, which is a really big step for us. So we're kind of on a mission to interconnect Arizona and the local community and some of the underrepresented groups that are farming these traditional heritage grains that you wouldn't off the the outside looking in, you might think that it's cactuses and buzzards out here, but it's quite a thriving scene actually now. So that's kind of a brief overview of wilderness as a whole.
Well, you guys are killing it. I mean, your brand presence on the internet and throughout beer festivals on the country when we could travel, and internationally. I would see it pop up in Europe. I find that remarkable. You guys do a lot more than just make great beer. Making great beer is the foundation of what you do. It's step one, but it's all the other steps you've done specifically around community efforts and connection to not only your local community and regional community, but the craft beer community around the world. Find that admirable. And that's why Arizona Wilderness sticks out to me as a brand I like to follow. I like to see what you guys are doing. And so hats off to you. Really, really awesome what you're doing out there. Before we get into collab, I don't want to get in that too early. I'd like to ask you kind of a simple question, but what really defines Arizona Wilderness beers in your brewing style? Like, what is it that defines you, that separates you from the rest, let's say?
Well, we're interesting in that we're a little rugged. You can even just look at my appearance. We consider ourselves a little rough around the edges and have a little natural flair to us. So when we originally got into the brewing scene, we had the more West Coast driven background. John had been to Russian River many times. And I was comfortable with brewing those styles. So we started out with some more traditional styles, but we were truly just drawn into the idea of farmhouse beer. And with that, you read the Wilderness Act and you go to a wilderness sign and you understand that it's an area that's meant to be unaugmented by man, leave no trace. That you shouldn't know that you've been there. And it kind of lives in its natural state, and it takes time to progress and have biodiversity and be an ecosystem that has balance. So we tried to take that mentality into the way that we brew beer and not completely control everything. We don't believe in really filtering beer or controlling the process too dramatically, other than keeping certain beers within their style guidelines. Recently, we've really enjoyed the idea of craft lager. So with the beer that we made, the Green for Good, with you all, that was that was what we were drawn to, is more the agriculture side of it. But over the years, we've done some projects, including our Camp Cool Ship, which was one where we spontaneously ferment in random wilderness areas around the state, depending on what time of year it is, what the elevation is, what the temperature is. And, and that's something that's truly, it was born out of a backpack experience that John and I had. We were walking through the wilderness and we wanted to tangibly connect it. And I live more on the engineer brain side, the logical connection, and John's the story side. So he did a great job of gathering people together to do these fermentation projects. And my engineer brain said, well, how do we build a contraption that can take wort, pre-fermented beer, to the wilderness and let it just express itself based on whatever's floating around in the air? So that was where Camp Cool Ship was born. And we actually bring the wort out with a cool ship and let it inoculate in various areas. And we've had some interesting success, some failures, but that's kind of the passion project side of wilderness, where we want to be experimental. We've used some Nordic Kveik strains that ferment at 100 degrees. These kind of uncontrolled variables that have true expression behind them. But I think that, like most people in the brewing industry, our brewing style has adapted and evolved based on what people want to drink, and what we ourselves have navigated towards over the years. The hazy IPA side of the brewing populace has exploded, and so we've adapted that almost in a parody fashion with our Dirty Hop Water series. But we like to have fun with it. And then the lager world was beautiful. It was a beautiful connection when we started to explore craft malt. So we've actually paired with the Nature Conservancy and a local farm in the Verde Valley, which is the middle of the state, and helped create a malting company called Sinagua Malt. And ultimately what that venture is dedicated to is the Verde River. It's a benefit corporation, so all of their decision making is predicated on getting water flow back into the river. As we've seen, we're in the West, and water's an issue. We're looking at the Colorado River Basin actually going on a water shortage next year, and that's due to the fact that there's just too much water being used. And so for us, the Verde River is our small contribution in that larger issue that we need to adapt to and understand as human beings. That if we're living in a desert, we need to be very conscious of our water use. So the idea behind Sinagua and what the Nature Conservancy brought to the table is that if we switch the grains that were being grown, essentially it was corn and alfalfa, to barley for beer, we would put over 100 million gallons back in the river annually, just based on our usage. So with that put in front of John and I, we said, well, this is the right thing to do. Let's do it right away. And so we switched over 100% to that malt company, and have helped them along the way with their R&D process. Got the base malt figured out within the first year, and we're moving on to the white wheat, the Sonoran white wheat, which is grown by the Yavapai Apache Nation, and they're learning that farming practice. So it's been a really interesting road to understand agriculture too, as we're in the middle of the city, and we work with farmers, but we aren't farmers ourselves. So we're learning those practices and encouraging practices to have less chemical involvement in the treatment of the fields, and just the cover crop rotations and what's being grown and the yield, and supporting that community and letting them still be profitable and make the same or more money from what we buy that they would from a subsidized crop like alfalfa or corn, which is harvested deep into the summer. So that's when the big water suck happens, and so we want to get away from that. So,
Pat, that's legendary. This is I'm so happy to hear from a company of with your presence amongst the beer community of shouting those words out loud, around encouraging the focus and attention on environmental efforts. It can happen where I think consumers and even brewers can lose sight that beer is truly an agricultural product. All the raw ingredients go into it. It's important to take care of water, take care of the land. All that is so crucial. I kind of joke here at Crosby in Oregon, our office is outdoors. So it's impossible to ignore climate change, what's happening around us. We can't sit inside and just pretend like it's going to be okay. We're taking active measures to make a difference. And I love hearing on the brewing end as well that there's so much you can do to become a sustainable brewery and continue to improve constantly, even working with other partners and improving together towards a shared goal. That is everything I like to hear about brand growth. So you guys are crushing it. Love to hear that.
Ultimately, that's what draws us to you. Understanding your values and aspiring to. I mean, our team has done research just on your all the information you put on your website. I give it to our marketing team and say, hey, look at what Crosby's doing here. The sustainability reporting they're doing, all the tracking of their inputs, into the land, the connection that you have with the land over. I mean, it's quite a long time, and we feel just so young in that space, but we do aspire to be a 100-year company that has this legacy of intertwined with the land, and so we thank you for that, because it gives us kind of a benchmark. Like, how do we get to their level? Well, these are the steps that we take, and can we incrementally advance those? And it does take a collective effort. It can't just be from the top or one person's desire. It has to be a collective effort, and that's what's led us to this B Corp journey, and we noticed that you went through that. So and I know that right now it's a lot of breweries are actually looking to take that leap, and it's not easy. It requires a lot of intent, and some due diligence, and some introspective looks into the way that you function, not just from an environmental perspective.
The B Corp journey is a hell of a journey, especially the certification piece. It's not easy. It's not as simple as a quick application and you get the rights to use a logo on your cans and website, right? Like, it's very deep.
Yeah.
2 years to go through our first application, through that certification. We encourage any brewery that's interested, any business that's interested, go after it. There's a self-assessment you can take that doesn't take that long. It takes an hour to get you started, get you an idea of what you need to get done. And I always encourage for any brewers that are out there, if you're curious about becoming certified B, shoot us an email, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. At least give you the first steps of where to start. Businesses that are certified B are doing good for the world, trying to make the world a better place for, my kids, our kids, starting to think long term. And when you're in a company that's multi-generational, you can think that way a little easier. So it's great to hear that there are so many breweries interested in that. I think it's the right direction for our industry to go down to stay sustainable.
Yeah, and have you found that from a the marketing standpoint, are people engaged in B Corp certification? Do they understand what it is? I mean, is it something that's emerging? I mean, how has that been for you?
Yeah, growing. I'd say 5 years ago, it was I had to explain it. Always telling the story of what B Corp is. People are like, what is this B? What is that? And telling that story and using examples like Patagonia, New Belgium Brewing, these examples that are like strong leaders in the world of B Corps. It's starting to become a known thing. I'm not explaining it as much as I used to. We're seeing other people in our industry achieve that certification. We're starting to see other brands and businesses throughout many industries. I'm seeing certified B pop up all over the place. Even products that I'll find in my house that my wife has bought. Unfamiliar with the product, but the first thing I look for, I turn around, I'm like, oh my gosh, I see the certifications that are on there. When I see a certified B product, I do feel a deeper connection to it and instantly begin supporting that brand because there's been a third-party audit of that company that they are doing the right things, or at least taking the right steps to do the right things in the long run. It's incredibly powerful. Again, anyone that's interested out there that's watching, shoot us an email if you want to learn more about how to become certified B. Happy to talk through that process. Now, we're an agriculture company. It's a little different than a brewery, but there's probably some similarities.
Yeah, I think it differentiates one option next to the other. And it isn't, it is more costly. So there will be some costs associated with it. I mean, people don't generally buy Patagonia just because they are looking apples to apples just at two products without understanding how it's made, the backstory, the sourcing, why would it cost more? And I think that is a clear difference. And generally speaking, I think if you understand that backstory, you'd be willing to pay a little bit extra for that. And that was kind of one of the more informal ways that I asked a lot of our regulars, hey, we're thinking about using this local grain. It's going to add like a quarter or 50 cents onto a pint. What do you think about that? And there's overwhelming support. So I think that people are willing to put their money there consciously if they know that it's doing something that's good for the community and the planet and the long-term health of society and humans.
Without a doubt. I use the term post-purchase dissonance. I actually use that Patagonia reference. If you go to a store and you've got Patagonia as an option next to 5 other brands, and you end up buying that Patagonia jacket, let's call it. Yeah, definitely not going to be the cheapest thing in the store. But what and with like the feeling you get buying that is you don't get that feeling of post-purchase dissonance of, well, shit, where did my money go? What am I supporting? When you buy that brand, for the most part, that money's going to probably a shared value and some sort of cause. Your money's going to something you support, and you feel good about that purchase. That's kind of the concept there. If your consumers are on board with it, the slight price increase shouldn't make a huge difference. You've got a good story to tell, and you're a business thinking about the future, not just the now. So great to hear you guys are going down that journey. I think that's so awesome, and it's inspirational to so many brewers out there that are watching or following you on social. Your social presence is very strong. I was even thinking earlier today, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. Your podcast game is really strong. You've got some pretty amazing guests on there. I think I was looking through Jill Kimmel, the comedian, documentary filmmaker. You had, I think his name's Rick Birch from Jimmy Eat World. What an awesome guest to have on your podcast. And also Kyle Shutt from the Sword. I don't know, there's a diverse array of guests that all have their own level of influence in the world. And I think you preaching the words you've been preaching today to them, they're going to spread that message. It's an awesome habit.
What's cool about all those guests is, in some way, most of them are tied to craft. And Rick opened his own distillery here in Arizona, and we met Kyle at Austin Beer Works. He was bartending and then playing gigs, and then we saw him in London at a beer festival type of event. So it's kind of interesting, the interconnectivity of these like-minded individuals. So it's great to kind of riff with them.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, let's jump into the collaboration, really the point of this whole discussion. I want to hear about the beer itself. I could take the reins and talk about it, but I feel like this is your area of expertise.
Sure.
What is this beer that we brewed and why?
So since we were, obviously geeking out on your hops, and that's the idea, right? We want to use some cool hops from you guys. IPA always comes to mind, Pale Ale always comes to mind, but we had the feeling that was going to be ubiquitous across the other breweries that you were working with. So we wanted to kind of stand out and also make more of a brewer's beer. It just hit 100 degrees today, so it's perfect timing for us for this beer to come out. So we went with a lager, and almost an identified style of lager, but I think a lot of people have had this style at this point, though it doesn't really fit into any particular category, but dry hop lager in general. I wouldn't consider it an IPL because it's not that strength, but the 5% range lager, bone dry, and really what we wanted to do was express Sinagua malt next to Crosby hops. So your estate grown Comet and Strata on top of that. I mean, it's this peach, but also like resinous pine situation that's really crushable. I mean, it's a really nice beer just to drink. And I'd consider it an ultimate brewer's beer. And we assume that, at Topwire, last time I went up and visited Topwire, which is incredible for anyone who hasn't been, just to get out there and you can just truly tangibly connect fields to what you're consuming at the moment. I mean, that's one of the better experiences you can have in beer is hops are there, hops are in your glass. You could probably have these hops that are in this beer growing next to you while you're enjoying the beer itself. So we wanted to connect all of that together, and then that really clean base, just for people to understand the base malt that we've come up with Sinagua malt. It's a Copeland varietal. It's the one that we found through the R&D phase works best in Arizona, best yields for us, and it's kind of in between a Pilsner and a pale malt. The reason for that was we wanted to build a malt that could go across all of our beers. So it's going to be a little non-traditional in that way. It's not a true Pilsner malt, but it's also, it's not just a pale malt that would be considered like a domestic two-row. So we kind of live in between that space, and then we can use it across the board for all of our beers, which works really well for the farmer and the maltster, as they're a small craft malt house, and there's two people there that are doing everything by hand. I mean, we went yesterday and got to talk with Carrie and Chip, and they actually malt each batch to what field it came from. So the moisture content from that field is going to change their process. So they have recipes of how to malt a specific grain based on the plot that it comes from, which is very similar to a small craft brewery in that we have, we don't have any rakes or pneumatic valves or anything on our system. It's old dairy equipment. You have to stir it by hand. And so it's the same way up there where they're this small operation. It's really predicated on the skills of the people and their touching and feeling, what batch of grain comes through. So we wanted that to showcase through in the beer, and we're really happy with it. It was a fun project. And not to mention the Michael James Jackson Foundation donation portion of it, which Crosby and Wilderness will be matching to a $5,000 going to scholarships for indigenous groups, and it's something that we've really wanted to start to focus on as craft beer kind of comes out of the growth phase and matures into what it's going to be in the future, we want to start to work with other groups and be more inclusive in the way that beer is presented, the environment in which it's served. And I've always felt that beer was a really open community. But if you look at it on paper, it's a lot of bearded white guys. It's a lot of me's out there. And that, not to say that's a bad thing, it happenstance is that, a lot of us got interested in this. But part of that is because it was people that we were comfortable being around. And it was definitely more of an industry where you're grunting in the back, and I know 100% what that's all about. And so we believe that it's time to start to change that a little bit. Our brewery, actually, we have 2 women brewers in our brewery, one of which is pregnant, so she's kind of directing the flow now, and they're both climbers, and but they've really been able to integrate into our brewery and create some balance. It's not this testosterone laden place. It's more of a balance. There's different perspectives. There's different ways of doing things that aren't always just so masculine driven, and including different groups of people. We'll be brewing Black is Beautiful this year, which is one beer that we didn't end up brewing last year because we were engaged in the People Power beer for the ACLU. But this year we'll be brewing with 18th Street Brewery out of Gary, Indiana, with Drew Fox, who's one of the coolest dudes that I've met. But it's great to get his perspectives on everything because, he's the first Black-owned brewery in Indiana's history. And he probably doesn't talk about it as much because he's not believing that, he needs to, he feels accepted, but we want to open that door for more people from different backgrounds to be a part of craft beer and bring something to this industry that we haven't seen before, perhaps. So it's really cool to see that happening and opening up those conversations. I'm glad that we could be part of the donation side of this and raise awareness with you all. And you already had the platform for us, so to be a part of, which is great. I mean, and I had a feeling that you were already engaged in social issues as well as the environmental side of what you do. So that was a pretty big no-brainer for us.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for the kind words. It sounds like you've got your head in the right place. Right. Craft industry is changing. The demographics there, and there's encouragement for the industry as a whole. Again, back to the B Corp values, there's a lot more to what B Corp's about than just sustainability. There's also sustainability of your employees. There's diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a lot of pieces that go into that. So this beer kind of falls directly into that. So I have a little image here for you. So Green for Good is what we named the beer. Green for Good is a campaign we have here at Crosby. The idea is to have a quarterly program that we're going to donate funds back to that's going to make the world a better place. So we started with the Michael James Jackson Foundation. This tied absolutely perfectly into that. The timing couldn't have been better for y'all to reach out to us and get this started. We love the MJF. Garrett Oliver is a visionary, amazing influencer, just a well-spoken individual. I love following his Instagram account, his food adventures. Pre-COVID were absolutely incredible, but even post-COVID, what he's able to whip up, it's pretty amazing to see. And his beers are phenomenal. He's a legend in the craft beer industry. So he's the current, I think he's the chair of the MJF right now, and is making an impact, making a difference in the world. And hats off to Garrett and everyone that's supporting the MJF. We were fortunate enough earlier this year to donate a good chunk of change through the Green for Good program. We also did some fund matching with other growers in our industry. This is the first time we got to do some fund matching with the brewers. So thank you, Pat, for jumping in and being involved with it. Makes us feel good. We also get to make cool beer out of it and connect with Arizona Wilderness on a deeper level. So thank you. Really appreciate that. I want to ask one more question outside. So let's summarize the beer really quick. So nice hoppy lager. We use Strata and Comet. It's state grown at the farm. For those of you that can make it down the top wire, when you're at the beer garden itself, you're going to be surrounded by hops on all 4 sides. Unfortunately, Strata and Comet aren't right there. They're actually sitting in a centennial yard, but the vibe is quite amazing. I will say right now, they're just shoots. But in about a month and a half, 2 months, they'll be climbing to the top of the trellis, and it's a beautiful space. So for anyone that's in the Oregon area, William Valley, please hang out, try this beer. We're excited to help raise some funds there and fun matching. So stoked on the beer. Thank you, Pat. That was awesome. Now, I was doing some research, reading through the website, kind of getting a better feel of the brand outside of what I've already seen on social. And there is a campaign called "Don't Fuck It Up," and I was wondering if you could give me an overview of what that's about.
So, "Don't Fuck It Up" is essentially, it's a beer that we, for over the years, like as a practical brewer, I had to manage yeast, and the idea of having a more simplistic beer that was accessible to a broader market was something that I was interested in, but I didn't really have a way to connect that to our conservation values and kind of our mission of our company. So we had, one of our employees had come from Other Half. His name's Conrad, and so he was from Jersey, and his whole thing was like, dude, what do I do when I go to the wilderness? Like, what are the rules? It's this leave no trace thing. How's this work? And John's simple answer to that was, don't fuck it up, man. So that stuck, and that became a mantra around the office. And we said, yeah, just don't fuck it up. And then we made a T-shirt that said "Don't F it up" on it, and the T-shirt went gangbusters. And that was my moment to step in and say, guys, I think we need to put this together for our beer. It could be really successful, really useful for us. So we did that. We decided that we wanted to make a blonde ale with local seasonal honey and add that directly into the fermentation and let it kind of, express itself seasonally based on what we could get, whether it's orange blossom honey or mesquite or a combination of both. Sometimes the bees around here just, they end up going where they go. And so we started working with a company called Rango Honey, and their whole mission is essentially they work with adults with autism and they provide housing for them and jobs to package the honey. So we felt like that was a perfect fit for the beer to have that mission behind it, as well as the base of Sinagua malt and a little bit of that Sonoran white wheat. And it's a super simple beer, and it's one of those taproom crushers that sells really, really well. And it's hard to walk up to the bar and see "Don't Fuck It Up" on a beer board or a tap handle and not order it. So you're going to at least get it once just to try it out. And it's a fun beer. Really like it. And we've gotten the compostable 4-pack holders to put on that beer as well. So it kind of hits all of the elements of our mission in a manner that's accessible to everybody, because we've done a lot of very complicated beers in the past. And so we've kind of matured into a space where we can take more simplistic approach to beer, but have a deeper meaning to it and more complexity than your average, blonde ale. So that was kind of the "Don't F It Up" story.
That's awesome. I love it. And for a good cause. That's great. All right, I'm going to summarize or sum up our conversation today. I really appreciate you jumping on. I know you're busy, clearly playing, I think, board games that are behind you.
Playing games,
busy day as a brewery owner. I always ask this question to guests. I love hearing the answer. It's a weirdly personal and challenging question. What is your favorite hop variety and why?
Favorite hop variety and why? That is a personal, challenging. You know what? It's very specific to experience as a brewer and specific to years. Like crop lots and years. I still remember the first homebrew package of Nelson that we got. It was a couple ounces when I was brewing at the old brewery that I worked at, and I think it was like 13, maybe 2012. I mean, it was a while back, and it was just insane. I'd never smelled something like that before, and so I was kind of obsessed with that hop for a couple of years there, and I wanted to use it in everything. Since there's been different crop varietals, and it hasn't quite hit what that gooseberry situation was when it first came out. And so I think it's really the expression of the hops as they mature year to year. But if I was going to pick one, it would 100% be the Neo Mexicanos, like original origin. We're in the Southwest, man, and I felt like that is just true to who we are. It was found in, rugged mountains of New Mexico, and it was this weird, multi-headed varietal that had this crazy, like, coconutty cedar thing. So those are a couple that kind of stand out in my mind. But to be honest, like, you guys have actually opened up my eyes to things like Comet, that you grow on your property, and I would have overlooked, because they're the less, like, known sexy hops that everybody throws in beer. And so those combinations now are it's a little less binary, where it's like, we just get a bunch of this, throw a shitload in, and then it's this smash experience of one hop. So I appreciate that. And your level of knowledge of your own agriculture and the way that the hops work together is really helpful for us as brewers, especially small brewers, because we don't typically get to go rub hops all the time. We don't buy enough hops to sometimes to even know what they are before we use them, or have our own sensory experience. So we're kind of trusting you as a hop provider to let us know that what you're getting out of the hops, what they might work in. And so that's super useful, because, we may not be able to do what bigger breweries do, where they're going and selecting one lot that they really like, because that's what their brewery is trying to make, stylistically speaking. So I think that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's the way that I look at it.
Yeah, you answered with 3, which is, I'll take 3 of your favorites. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's good to hear about Comet. I think when you, as a smaller brewer, creativity really matters. What can you do with the ingredients in front of you? And to me, that's what defines great brewers. So I don't think that's a bad thing. New Mexicanos varieties, I think they are weird in the best possible way. I love New Mexicanos hops. I hope you've had a chance to try Zappa. If not, let's have a side conversation. Let's get some Zappa to you. Very interesting hop variety. Sure. And then to start off, Nelson, what an amazing variety. And still to this day, I mean, New Zealand is growing some just unbelievable hop varieties, and Nelson still continues to crush as a favorite. So all 3 great answers. I'll take them. I like the stories behind them as well. All right, cool. Well, the collaboration beer, Green for Good, is out. It's on tap right now at Top Wire. It's literally where I'm going as soon as this call is over. It's also, you released it on Earth Day, April 22nd, at both of your tap rooms, correct? Is it in retail as well?
We actually kept that pretty close to chest, so we're keeping that in our locations. We're in Gilbert, for anyone who may be listening who's an Arizona resident. We're in Gilbert, our OG pub location, and then downtown Phoenix on Roosevelt Row, where the art walk happens. So, those are our 2 retail outlets right now. We might have a little bit trickle out. Andrew, our sales slinger, he absorbs, as much as he possibly can. But we like people to come in and experience at Wilderness, get the full, and eat a bunch of food. That's been a big thing. People come in, enjoy the food, especially, COVID's been a little weird with being able to have fun. So.
Yeah, well, it sounds like some fun is coming back. So I hope folks come out, drink the beer, do some good for the world, support a brand, that's doing really good for the world. And if anyone wants a good follow Arizona Wilderness at AZ Wilderness. Their Instagram's a lot of fun. Patrick, you and Jonathan both are always all over the place. Pre-COVID, and I'm assuming once COVID kind of chills out, they'll be doing this again. Lots of travel, cool adventures, always drinking beer with good people. It's a really fun follow, really inspiring. Check out azwbeer.com for all their updates. That's about it. It's beer 30 for me. I feel like ended a little short today. Top Wire's open. Music's playing. Good beers on draft. I'm getting over there. Pat, man, thank you so much for the time today. Let's chat soon. I hope you drink beer in person at some point soon, and love to have you and your whole team. Bring the Sonoma Malt team out as well. Let's host you at Crosby. I'd love to show you the farm, drink some beer at Top Wire, and catch up over some beers. It'd be great.
Sweet. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Pat. Take it easy.
All right.